Chapter 7 Lord Spittleworth Tells Tales. That night, the two lords dined, as usual, with King Fred. After a sumptuous meal of Baronstown venison, accompanied by the finest Jeroboam wine, followed by a selection of Kurtzburg cheeses and some of Mrs. Beamish's Featherlight Fairy's cradles, Lord Spittleworth decided the moment had come. He cleared his throat, then said, "I do hope, Your Majesty, that you weren't disturbed by that disgusting fight among the children in the courtyard this afternoon." "Fight?" repeated King Fred, who'd been talking to his tailor about the design for a new cloak, so had heard nothing. "What fight?"
"Oh dear, I thought Your Majesty knew," said Lord Spittleworth, pretending to be startled. "Perhaps Major Beamish could tell you all about it."
But King Fred was amused rather than disturbed. "Oh, I believe scuffles among children are quite usual, Spittleworth." Spittleworth and Flapoon exchanged looks behind the king's back, and Spittleworth tried again.
"Your Majesty is, as ever, the very soul of kindness,"
said Spittleworth. "Of course, some kings," Flapoon muttered, brushing crumbs off the front of his waistcoat. "If they'd heard that a child spoke of the crown so disrespectfully—" "What's that?" exclaimed Fred, the smile fading from his face. "A child spoke of me disrespectfully?" Fred couldn't believe it. He was used to the children shrieking with his excitement when he bowed to them from the balcony.
"I believe so, Your Majesty," said Spittleworth, examining his fingernails. "But as I mentioned, it was Major Beamish who separated the children. He has all the details."
The candles sputtered a little in their silver sticks. "Children say all manner of things in fun," said King Fred. "Doubtless the child meant no harm." "Sounded like bally treason to me," grunted Flapoon.
"But,"
said Spittleworth swiftly,
"it is Major Beamish who knows the details. Flapoon and I may, perhaps, have misheard."
Fred sipped his wine. At that moment, a footman entered the room to remove the pudding plates. "Cankerby," said King Fred, for such was the footman's name, "fetch Major Beamish here." Unlike the king and the two lords, Major Beamish didn't eat 7 courses for dinner every night. He'd finished his supper hours ago and was getting ready for bed when the summons from the king arrived. The major hastily swapped his pajamas for his uniform and dashed back to the palace, by which time King Fred, Lord Spittleworth, and Lord Flapoon had retired to the yellow parlor, where they were sitting on satin armchairs, drinking more Jeroboam wine and, in Flapoon's case, eating a second plate of Fairy's cradles. "Ah, Beamish," said King Fred, as the major made a deep bow. "I hear there was a little commotion in the courtyard this afternoon." The major's heart sank. He'd hoped that news of Bert and Daisy's fight wouldn't reach the king's ears. "Oh, it was really nothing, Your Majesty," said Beamish.
Come, Beamish," said Flapoon. You should be proud that you've taught your son not to tolerate traitors.
There was no question of treachery, said Major Beamish. They're only children, my lord.
Do I understand that your son defended me, Beamish? Said King Fred. Major Beamish was in a most unfortunate position. He didn't want to tell the king what Daisy had said. Whatever his own loyalty to the king, he quite understood why the motherless little girl felt the way she did about Fred. And the last thing he wanted to do was to get her into trouble. At the same time, he was well aware that there were 20 witnesses who could tell the king exactly what Daisy had said, and was sure that if he lied, Lord Spittleworth and Lord Flapoon would tell the king that he, Major Beamish, was also disloyal and treacherous.
Yes, Your Majesty.
It's true that my son Bert defended you, said Major Beamish. However, allowance must surely be made for the little girl who said the unfortunate thing about Your Majesty. She's passed through a great deal of trouble, Your Majesty, and even unhappy grown-ups may talk widely at times. What kind of trouble has the girl passed through? Asked King Fred, who couldn't imagine any good reason for a subject to speak rudely of him. Her name is Daisy Dovetail, Your Majesty, said Major Beamish, staring over King Fred's head at a picture of his father, King Richard the Righteous. Her mother was the seamstress who— Yes, I remember, said King Fred loudly, cutting Major Beamish off. Very well, that's all, Beamish. Off you go. Somewhat relieved, Major Beamish bowed deeply again and had almost reached the door when he heard the king's voice. What exactly did the girl say, Beamish? Major Beamish paused with his hand on the doorknob. There was nothing else for it but to tell the truth. She said that Your Majesty is selfish, vain, and cruel, said Major Beamish. Not daring to look at the king, he left the room. Bab 7. Lord Spittleworth bercerita. Di bab ini diceritakan bahwa Lord Spittleworth dan Lord Flapoon istilahnya mengadu kepada King Fred. Jadi mereka saat itu sedang makan malam seperti biasa, dengan makan malam yang enak-enak lah. Kalau teman-teman ingat di chapter yang pertama itu diceritakan bahwa cornucopia ini kaya dengan makanan-makanan khasnya seperti anggur Jeroboam, lalu ada keju Kurtzberg juga dan sebagainya. Saat itu Lord Flapoon bercerita bahwa apakah saya harap Yang Mulia tidak terganggu dengan perkelahian yang terjadi tadi di halaman siang tadi. Dan King Fred, karena dia sibuk dengan penjahitnya, maka dia pun bertanya-tanya, emangnya ada perkelahian apa? Dan Lord Spittleworth ini dia pura-pura kaget gitu. Akhirnya dia bilang, mungkin Major Beamish bisa menceritakannya dengan lengkap. Nah, tapi saat itu King Fred masih bilang, namanya juga anak-anak, ya wajar lah kalau mereka berkelahi gitu. Nah, Spittleworth dan Flapoon ini saling exchange looks ya. Artinya apa nanti kita bahas ya. Mereka tetap berusaha gitu. Istilahnya Spittleworth memuji-muji. Yang Mulia ini seperti biasa baik sekali. Dan ya si Flapoon biasalah nambah-nambahi. Ya tentu saja gitu. Sampai akhirnya si Flapoon nambahi, jika para raja itu mendengarkan bahwa
seorang anak itu berbicara dengan tidak sopan tentang sang raja. Nah, akhirnya baru di sini mulai si Fred itu penasaran. Emangnya ada apa itu? Kok ada seorang anak yang berbicara tentangku dengan tidak sopan? Karena biasanya King Fred itu melihat bahwa anak-anak itu selalu tertarik ketika dia tampil di balkoni terus membungkuk kepada anak-anak. Nah, akhirnya si Spittleworth ini bilang, ya tanya aja sama Major Beamish itu, dia tahu lebih detail. Sampai saat ini King Fred masih menganggap anak-anak biasanya ya gitulah, mungkin cuman bercanda gitu. Aku yakin anak-anak nggak bermaksud buruk. Nah, si Flepun ini nggak terima. Tapi kalau aku sih lebih ke pengkhianatan, itu berani sekali dia. Nah, si Spittleworth juga nambah, ya balik lagi Major Beamish yang tahu. Flepun dan saya mungkin ya cuman salah dengar aja gitu. Akhirnya ada seorang penjaga yang lewat kan, kebetulan memang ada keperluan. Nah, namanya Kirby. Nah, si King Fred ini bilang, Kirby tolong panggil Major Beamish. Akhirnya Major Beamish pun datang. Nah, Major Beamish sudah pergi sebenarnya. Jadi dia nggak makan makanan yang enak seperti para lord yang bersama sang raja. Terus akhirnya dia siap-siap, sebenarnya mau tidur sih, udah pakai piyama. Akhirnya pakai seragam lagi, terus dia mendatangi sang raja. Dan akhirnya sang raja tuh tanya, katanya tadi ada perkelahian ya gitu. Nah, si Major ini istilahnya kayak waduh, dia bingung karena sebenarnya dia nggak mau perkelahian antara Bird dan Daisy itu sampai ke telinga sang raja. Akhirnya ya dia bilang, itu nggak apa-apa yang mulia gitu. Terus si Flepun mancing-mancing, ayolah Beamish, harusnya kamu bangga karena kamu telah ngajarin anakmu untuk tidak mentolerir pengkhianat. Si Major Beamish menimpali, tidak ada pengkhianatan yang mulia, mereka itu cuma anak-anak. Terus si King Fred balik tanya, oh anakmu membelaku ya? Si Major Beamish ini seperti buah si malakama. Dia nggak pingin istilahnya mengadu kepada sang raja apa yang Daisy katakan. Meskipun dia itu sangat loyal kepada sang raja, tapi dia sangat memahami bahwa Daisy itu sedih ya karena setelah kehilangan ibunya itu. Dan dia sangat memahami kesedihan Daisy itu dan apa yang dia rasakan terhadap si King Fred, karena kan kita tahu sendiri bahwa Daisy itu menyalahkan sang raja. Namun dia juga sadar bahwa yang lihat perkelahian itu banyak dan mereka semua dengar apa yang dikatakan Daisy. Jadi nggak mungkin juga dia bohong, karena kalau dia bohong nanti Spittleworth sama Flepun juga akan mengadu kepada sang raja bahwa Major Beamish itu juga nggak loyal. Terus akhirnya ya dia mengaku, ya anak saya membelamu rajaku. Namun kita juga perlu memahami apa yang membuat Daisy itu sedih sehingga dia mengatakan sesuatu yang tidak seharusnya tentang King Fred. Dia telah mengalami banyak musibah yang mulia, dan bahkan orang dewasa pun juga pasti bisa ngomong yang enggak kalau misalkan mereka lagi sedih. Dan si King Fred itu tanya, emangnya Daisy itu kenapa? Dia kan istilahnya sampai nggak percaya, kenapa sih kok ada anak yang sampai berbicara seperti itu tentang dia. Terus akhirnya ya si Major Beamish cerita namanya Dovetail, Daisy Dovetail. Terus dia adalah anaknya Dora Dovetail yang telah meninggal itu. Dan sepertinya King Fred ingat sih. Oh ya oke ya sudah paham. Yaudah kamu boleh pulang. Nah, Major Beamish ini sudah lega kan. Hampir mau keluar, tangannya masih nyantol di gagang pintu tuh. Si raja tuh tanya, emangnya Daisy Dovetail bilang apa tentang aku? Akhirnya Major Beamish tidak punya pilihan lain selain mengaku. Dia mengatakan bahwa yang mulia itu egois, terlalu pede dan kejam katanya. Sampai takutnya itu dia nggak berani menatap sang raja. Jadi akhirnya dia langsung pergi. Kali ini kita akan membicarakan tentang 3 kosakata yang kita temui di bab 7 ini. Yang pertama adalah disrespectfully, yaitu secara tidak sopan. Contoh kalimatnya, he stared at me disrespectfully. Artinya dia melihatku dengan tatapan yang tidak sopan, atau dia menatapku dengan tidak sopan. Yang kedua ada defend, artinya membela atau mempertahankan. Mulan, kalau yang sudah nonton filmnya, meskipun ya ini kita nggak ngomongin reviewnya ya, saya sendiri belum nonton. Mulan defended the pride of her family. Artinya Mulan mempertahankan kehormatan keluarganya. Yang terakhir ada exchange looks. Kalau ada kata-kata exchange itu artinya saling bertukar atau saling melakukan sesuatu. Contoh, di contoh ini ada exchange looks, artinya saling melihat satu sama lain. They exchanged looks without saying anything. Mereka saling menatap satu sama lain tanpa berkata apapun. Oke, sekian dulu cerita di Ickabog. Jangan lupa untuk like, comment, dan subscribe. Silakan klik tombol lonceng dan share video ini ke teman-teman kalian. I'm Danny from Danz English and see you later. Bye.